right. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Geographic. I'll be your host for today. And welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. In fact, this is our first event of the 2021-2022 school year. We're really excited to get things going with classrooms across North America. Last year, I think we did somewhere in the neighborhood of 550 live events for students everywhere. And we're looking forward to doing even more than that this year. So one theme we always touch on in September, the last 3 years, we've started with ocean plastic. So, you know, it is a real issue with a dump truck's worth of plastics hitting our ocean every minute, up to 11 million tons of plastic making its way into our ocean. But we are talking to scientists, to explorers, to artists around the world who are researching the issue, putting media out for people to see and learn more, and of course, looking for innovative solutions. So we're really excited to have Martina Capriotti kicking things off for us today. She's an Italian marine biologist and researcher. She received the National Geographic and Sky Ocean Rescue Scholarship. This helps support her research on microplastics and chemical contamination in the Adriatic Sea. And she is currently studying how microplastics can affect suspension feeders at the University of Connecticut. So let's bring Martina in with us right now. Hey, Martina, how you doing today?
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, really well, thank you.
All right. Well, it's always great to have you join us. I think we've been lucky enough to steal you the last couple of years to learn about the incredible work that you're doing, raising awareness about these important issues. So I'm going to let you take over for a little bit. Then we will jump into a little Kahoot quiz. And then, of course, we'll turn the classrooms free with a little Q&A action.
Sure. I'm going to share my screen. So, yeah. All right. Can I have feedback from you, Joe?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. Perfect. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Joe, for the presentation. Like Joe said earlier, I'm Italian, so I have a strong Italian accent, so please forgive me if I made like few mistakes or if you don't understand something, please let me know at the end of the presentation and we can go over and make more explanation. So today we're going to talk about plastics and microplastic pollution in the ocean. Plastic pollution is now affecting many areas of the planet in a really hard way. There are currently many kids that are actually playing surrounded by plastic waste on the river, on their playgrounds, and this is a really important problem to address immediately. Plastics actually is I don't know who of you like in the past thought about the plastic material itself. So plastic actually is a material that comes from natural resources. It basically comes from petroleum. So, but the transformation of these compounds made by human make it like a really, let's say, dangerous material for the marine environment. So that's why we are talking about plastic pollution, because we lose control over the years on the amount of plastic waste that we release in the environment. But where all these plastic waste actually come from? Basically come from all the human activities. Let's think about when we go to the beach and we leave like plastic bottles or plastic caps along the beach. They can easily reach the ocean. There are also many marine activities like ferries or fishing activities that can actually be source of the plastic garbage in the sea. But one of the main source of plastic in the ocean is actually the rivers and all the amount of garbage that are transported through the storms Okay, so even if the garbage is released in the environment really far away from the coast, it can easily reach the sea. So that's important to mention, because not only people living on the coast are actually responsible for the plastic pollution, but also people that live really far away from the coast. So when these plastic litters arrive to the sea, more or less 15 or in some cases also less than the 15% of this plastic actually float. And these are the plastic that we can see with our eyes, okay, floating on the surface of the ocean. Another 15% can be found on the water column. So it means in the water body between the surface and the sea bottom. But more than 70% of the garbage actually sink to the seabed. So we have like our sea bottoms that are becoming real dumpster. So if we focus for just 1 second on the plastic that is floating, we should know that in the ocean, in the planet, we have like really huge accumulation of this garbage that are actually improperly called plastic islands. But I'm saying properly because they are absolutely not islands. They are like huge accumulation, and their name actually is garbage patches. And we generally call plastic patches or plastic garbage patches just because more than 80% of all this waste is actually composed of plastic. In the picture over here, you can see a shot of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that is currently floating on the north of the Pacific. And basically all these accumulation of garbage take place because in the ocean we have really huge oceanic currents that circulate in a circular way. So they like basically design a circle, and they are called gyre or vortex. So they are able to like transport all this garbage and accumulate all this garbage in the middle of this circle. So year after year, all these patches started to become larger and larger. But I want to show you now also some pictures of garbage that are found on the sea bottom, because we said earlier that more than 70% of the garbage actually sink. And do you know which is the deepest point of our ocean? It is the Mariana Trench, that is about 11,000 meters deep, and it is just over here in the Pacific Ocean. And you should know that oceanographers, so scientists, found garbage even in this deepest point of the planet. And these are some shots, some pictures of the garbage over there. But I come from Italy, and unfortunately, in Italy, in the south, we have a really bad situation in the Messina Strait, that is a really tiny strait between the Italian peninsula and the Sicily Island. It has been recorded one of the highest density of marine litter all over the planet. And here you can see horrible pictures of the sea bottom over there, and that scientists over there calculated an amount of about 200 garbage pieces every 10 meters of sea bottom. Now, what's the problem with all this plastic in the ocean? The problem is that plastic is actually hurting so much marine animals, hurting and in some cases also killing. For example, here on the top you can see a sea turtle that is like literally stuck in a fishing net, and this is a phenomenon called ghost fishing, because there are like these fishing nets that are abandoned in the ocean, sometimes intentionally, many times unintentionally. but these fishing nets actually continue to catch fish, even if there are no fishermen to take them off the ocean. And so, unfortunately, many animals that get stuck in these nets can actually die over there, because when they are stuck, if, for example, it's a fish, these fish can't swim anymore, so can't search for food anymore. In this case, we have a picture of this sea turtle. So sea turtle have lungs exactly like us, so they are really great in swimming and can hold the breath for a really long time, but at a certain point they need to come up to the surface to take more air. But if they are stuck underwater in these nets, they are not able anymore to breathe, so they actually drown underwater. Many other animals are affected by plastic bags, for example. Look at these the seabirds, but also other animals that breathe with lungs, so they need air, like I said, sea turtles, also dolphins. And this because underwater, if a plastic bag ends up in the ocean, underwater, it can take a shape that is really similar to jellyfish. We are able to distinguish between a jellyfish and a plastic bag, but sea turtles or dolphins actually can't, because they have never seen a plastic bag in their life, so they don't know that actually is a piece of garbage. Other animals are actually stuck in plastic rings or in other kind of plastic garbage. Many of them managed to survive, like these two pictures. They survive, but they are definitely not healthy, because look at the shape of this turtle, or look at this seal that is actually bleeding because plastic is actually hurting. Over here, you can see a picture of a sea turtle that is in a huge pain because scientists are trying to save her, removing a plastic straw from her nose. So maybe next time, let's think twice before using a plastic straw that is, for the majority of the population, not necessary to use. And but one of the other problem with plastic pollution is that it can actually be easily ingested. Here you can see a cetacean that was found stranded along the Norwegian coast, and scientists from University of Bergen studied these stranded animal and found a huge amount of waste inside its stomach. They found more than 30 plastic bags. If I remember well, also about 70 plastic caps. They found flip-flops and many other marine litter. And the big problem when they ingest all this plastic is that plastic gets stuck in the stomach, and these plastics are with a huge difficult transferred to the intestine and be released out from the animal itself. So the more plastic they ingest, the more the stomach accumulate this litter inside. And the animal, when managed to eat like real food, so not plastic, is not able to get the 100% of the good nutrients from this real food because of the presence of plastic in the stomach. And the same is happening to seabirds. In the seabirds, actually, the situation is even worse. They ingest a lot of also smaller plastic pieces that come from the breakdown of larger plastic objects. And the big problem for the seabirds is that the parents can transfer the plastic pieces to the chicks. So the chicks basically start to grow up with already the plastic inside. And indeed, there are many of them that get sick, that are not growing up really healthy, and many of them actually die before reaching the adulthood. But plastic pollution actually has another side, another phase. What I showed you so far is what we can actually see with our eyes, but the plastic also have an invisible phase, what I like to call invisible pollution, because we can only see on a microscope if we analyze seawater. And I'm talking about microplastics. So microplastics are, by definition, by a simple definition, plastic particles that are smaller than 5 millimeters. So they are really, really tiny. And but 5 millimeters is actually a dimension that can be still seen with the human eyes, but the majority of the microplastics are actually invisible. And this is a picture that I shot with a microscope, just to have an idea on how the shape or the color or which kind of microplastics I was studying. But now let's take a look a little bit on how microplastics ends up to the ocean. So where do they actually come from? So we can basically have two main groups of microplastics. We have the primary microplastics and the secondary microplastics. So the primary microplastics means that are plastic pieces, plastic particles that are intentionally produced by plastic companies of these dimensions so small. Let's think about many cosmetics, like the scrubs, facial scrubs, or the toothpaste that hold that really tiny spot inside. They are made of plastics. So fortunately, there are many laws that are banning the use of microplastic in cosmetics. But for many years in the past, when we used this kind of products, we released in the environment tons and tons of these little pieces. But when we focus on primary microplastics, we can also think about the plastic pellets that we can see over here. Plastic pellets basically are the virgin plastics, so the raw material that companies use to produce plastic objects. And we can, this picture, for example, was shot in a beach, and there are many beaches of the planet where we can find these plastic pellets stranded on the coastline. The second group of microplastics are called secondary microplastics. So secondary means that they become so small in a second moment. So after the degradation and fragmentation process of larger plastic items, plastic litter. For example, this is a plastic bottle that I found during one of the beach cleanup I took part, and it was actually in the process of fragmenting and releasing a lot of really tiny pieces of plastic. And this because secondary microplastic, this because a plastic item, a plastic litter, when ends up to the ocean after many months, after many years, all the sunlight and the movement of the ocean interact and interfere with the stability of the plastic material. So the plastic become weaker and weaker, and at the end start to fragment. And this is another example, but this is a piece of a plastic bag that also in this case was fragmented in really, really tiny plastic film. And over here, you can see a microplastics picture I shot that with a microscope, and you can see how secondary microplastics are like fragments, and sometimes these pieces are really sharp, okay? And then we can skip to another like subcategory of microplastics that are called microfibers. So microfibers are like really tiny fibers, so really tiny filament that are released in the environment every time we wash our synthetic fabric clothes. So every time, if we have clothes made with, I don't know, nylon, polyamide, polyester, those are all synthetic fabrics. And this synthetic fabric means that are made with plastic materials. So every time we wash them, we are releasing thousands and thousands of these really tiny filament in the sea. But now, what's the problem with microplastics? They are so small, how they can actually hurt marine animals. There are so many scientists on the planet that are still studying these kind of procedures and still trying to understand how and if actually microplastics are hurting marine environment and even us as human. And one of the main interaction between marine animals and microplastics is the ingestion. So microplastics are so small that can be like of the same size of the tiny members of the plankton. Okay, you can find like some pictures over here. So they are so tiny they can be easily like ingested by the great variety of marine animals, even at the lower levels of the food chain. And so that's why scientists found microplastics not only in larger animals but also in the tiny ones. One of the aspects that should be considered when studying microplastics is their ability to act like a vector, like a carrier of chemicals. So in the marine environment, unfortunately, there are a huge quantities of chemicals that are toxic for life. You probably have heard in the past about pesticides that are actually chemicals that are used in the land, in the mainland, but can easily reach the marine environment. And we are talking about really tiny molecules, but they can actually hurt marine animals. We also have other kind of chemical contaminants. If you're curious, I can maybe mention that. We have the PCB, we have the flame retardant, we have the phthalates, parabens. I know there are really weird words, but there are some few examples of chemicals, toxicants that are in the sea. And one of the problems with these chemicals is that they can easily attach to the surface of a microplastic piece. So let's take a look for a second to this picture over here. MP is like microplastic. So this blue shape object is a microplastic piece, and these red spheres are like these toxicants, so these toxic chemicals. They are easily attracted on the surface of the microplastics. And so basically when microplastic like travel all over the ocean or is ingested by a fish or other marine animals, they can transport inside the fish also these really tiny chemicals. So like I said, we don't know actually currently how big is this problem. We know that it's happening, but scientists are still in the process of understanding how this mechanism is actually hurting marine animals and also arrive to humans. I'm talking about humans because even as even we are like ingesting microplastics every week, basically. And we know that because microplastics have been found in human feces. So this is a proof that we are actually ingesting microplastics as well. And microplastics in our diet do not come from entirely from seafood, like many of you maybe are thinking about. But microplastics have been found also in many plastic bottle beverage, have been found in the honey, have been found even in fruit and vegetables, and in many other food that we like daily consume. So this is a big problem, and but we are not to lose hope. Because we have the key to save our planet and to save the world population from this threat. I concluding this presentation. Sorry. Oh my God, sorry. I'm concluding this presentation, hoping to create a sort of interaction with all of you guys. I don't know if you have any questions or if you wanna like deepen some concept that I mentioned earlier.
All right. Martina, thank you so much. That was a great presentation.
Yeah.
And really, you know, really highlighted the threats of not only the larger pieces of plastic, but how that the microplastic can bring those toxins right into marine life as well as our own bodies. So it's definitely something we should be paying attention to. Okay, so we are going to give the first Kahoot quiz a try. So those who are tuning in, whether you're tuning in live via Facebook or you're in the classroom right now, it's really easy to join. So this is the link here. You could do it as a whole class together up on the big presentation screen, or if you do have an individual device like a Chromebook or a tablet, you can find it there. So that's the website right there, kahoot.it, and that will bring you to the right spot. I'm going to share my screen really quickly here and show you what you will see when you get to that spot. Where's my Chrome tab? There we go. So it should look something like that. That's what you should see. And then it's going to ask you to enter a PIN. So I'm going to stop my screen share and I am going to enter that event for you. And the PIN is going to pop up on the screen. So here we go. Okay, so that should be loaded. I'll share my screen now. Hopefully this is the right page. Nope, I picked the wrong one. Try that one more time. All right. There we go. So you should see it now. The pin is up there, 1978735. So if you pop that pin in, I'll wait for a few moments to see if we have any players join us today. You can either do it on the big screen, do it all together. There we go. Oh, there we go. Players are coming in. Martina, can you see that okay on the screen?
Sorry, just a second. I was in the website. Yes, I can see that.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, well, yeah, lots of players. Great. It's going to be a good game. We'll see how well everyone was paying attention to Martina's awesome lesson today. I'll give another few moments to bring more players in. So we'll have about 20 seconds per question. Obviously, you get points for the right answer, but the quicker you can put that right answer in, the better things are for you, the higher points you'll get. So there we go. A few players still drifting in. We're almost at 100. That's great. I'm going to hit start now, and let's check out this quiz. All right, first question up on the screen. Plastic comes from, is it natural sources or is it artificial sources? So the material, that is it natural or is it artificial? Lots of answers flying in. All right, natural sources. 40 students had that correct. Good job. So it is natural sources like petroleum, but then we take that and we build it into the materials that we use. We alter it, we change it to things like plastic bottles and other plastics. So here we go. Next question on deck. And a shout out to Ashton T, who's leading the scoreboard at the moment. Here we go. Question 2, about how much plastic sinks to the sea floor? Was it 10%, 30%, 50%, or 70%? All right, that was about 70%. And it looks like we had lots of students get that one. 89 answered that one correctly, and Ben has taken the lead. Here we go. Question 3. What is this picture showing? Is it a telescope image of asteroids, planets, and space dust? Is it dust in your home on a floor? Or is it a microscopic image of small plastic pieces? All right, good job. 96 students picked small plastic pieces, a microscopic image. Ashton T has retaken the lead, and let's go with our final question. What is ghost fishing? Is it ghosts that fish in the sea? Is it fishing nets that catch marine creatures? Or is it fishermen that catch fish's ghosts? All right, 97 students went with fishing nets that have been discarded, and they're still catching marine creatures. So great work, everybody. Let's check out our podium. Ben in third place. Taylor W in second. Oh, and coming from behind, Julian takes first place. Good job, everybody. Thanks for participating in our first quiz. We'll try to do these more and more during the event. Good stuff. All right, let's bring that back here. I'm going to stop that screen share. And then I do want to show something, because we did mention ghost fishing. So a lot of fishing gear is made of plastics, but people are trying to do something about it. So this is really cool. This is a skateboard, and it's completely made of recycled fish nets.
Wow.
By a company in Chile. They're called Borreo. So you can check them out online. And this is the world's first skateboard ever created entirely from recycled fishing nets, which is really, really cool. So you can check out that.
Yeah, great
online.
job.
All right, let's jump into a little bit of Q&A action. Those who are tuning in virtually, if you send your questions in, I'll give a shout out. We've got classrooms, Brighton, Ontario, Ottawa, Ontario, Dryden, Ontario, who've already said hi. So send in a few questions via the chat, and let's visit a few of our other classrooms and see if they have some questions for us. So Mrs. Hardy's 5th, 6th graders are joining us. How are we doing today? There's everybody.
Wait. Hello. Hello, good
Hi, everyone. All right, got a question for us.
Do you have the microphone on, hon? Okay, who has a question? Go up and ask your question. Or JD, oh, you can't.
Yeah, I have to shift out because I was
Here comes someone.
Does the plastic decompose in the ocean?
Oh, that's a good question. So we said earlier we mentioned about microplastics. So this means that big, larger plastic objects actually start to decompose. But it's hard to mention that decomposition because when we talk about decomposition means that there are some specific bacteria that destroy all the plastics, so the plastic do not exist anymore. So in the ocean that's not actually happening right now because plastic can still exist in really small plastic pieces like microplastics, like I said. But there are some bacteria that are able to work and feed basically on plastic polymers. Plastic polymers are the molecules that compose the plastic material. And this is a good news actually, because it means that we can work in the future on using these bacteria to start to destroy the plastic material from garbage. One of the main problems with this process is that these bacteria are working really slow. And we have tons and tons of plastic items. So in these moments, it's hard to use them for let plastic disappear from our planet. But I have many colleagues that are working on that and are working on the molecules that they use to destroy this plastic. So I'm really confident that in few years we can have good solution and good results.
All right, great question. I'm going to head to Florida quickly and check in with Miss Pressel's crew. I know there may have been a class change, but we'll see if they had a question left behind for us. Hey, Miss Pressel, how are you?
Good morning. Yes, we did have a class change, but they left me with some questions I was to ask you.
Perfect.
So one of the questions was, are ocean plants also affected by microplastics? Has there been research done with that?
Yeah, so there are I'm not a botanist, honestly, but I know that some really tiny pieces, the smaller microplastics or even the nanoplastics that are like a form, a dimensional form of the plastic that is even smaller than the microplastics that have been found inside algae or marine plants. So, like I said earlier, we don't know exactly how microplastics are affecting or really affecting the health, but we know that they can actually enter the body. And actually not just in the ocean, microplastics and nanoplastics are found even in fruit and vegetables on the land. So yeah, we know that also the plants in general, so vegetable organisms can be affected in some way. That's a good question.
Great question. Okay, let's head to St. John Catholic School. We have joining us. Let me pop them into the call here.
Hello, Martina. We have a question from Julian.
Hi.
So do the fish with plastic in them, when we eat them, does that go back into the water stream eventually and just become a vicious cycle?
So that's actually a really good point. Thank you so much. So one of the things that was observed in the ingestion of plastic, of microplastics, so the tiny one, is that they can be easily ingested through the feces. So they can be found in the intestine of a fish. For example, if we catch a fish in the ocean, we can find some microplastic pieces in the intestine. But from a food consumption point of view, it apparently is not a big deal for so far for our health, because when we eat a fish, we eat just the muscle of the fish. We are not eating the intestine or the stomach, so because we generally clean the fish from that organs. So apparently, so far, we are not so like exposed to microplastics from fish itself. There are other like seafood that can be ingested entirely with the entire body, and in that case we can like ingest few numbers, limited numbers of microplastics. But also in our case, as we ingest in microplastics, they can be also easily digested, because like I said earlier, microplastics are found in the feces. So we ingest microplastics, but can actually go out from our body. So that's why I was saying that currently we don't know how big is the problem for our health. So we know that we eat them, but we don't know so far the mechanism, how they hurt the health.
All right, great question. And Julian, is that Julian, the champ of our quiz today?
Yep.
All right, good job, Julian. Very cool. So we have another class that's joining us, and they are they're in the call, but they don't have their cam and mic connected today. But they did send us in a question. So it's Ms. Freyr's grade 6s are joining us, and they'd really like to know what can students do? What would you recommend students do to try and limit their use, keep plastics from getting into these environments?
Yeah, so hi guys. So in my presentation, I mentioned about the origin of plastic pollution in the ocean. And the great majority of plastic pollution come from single-use plastic. Single-use plastics are those plastic items that we use only once, and then we throw them away. But this plastic continue to live and travel the planet for many, many decades or even centuries, polluting the ocean. So one of the things that we can do is to avoid to use single-use plastic. That is the main like plastic litter in the ocean. When I talk about single-use plastics, I'm referring to like plastic bottles, for water bottles, for example, plastic cups, plastic bags for like shopping, avoiding plastic straws. So what we can actually do, for example, we need to drink water every day, but we can use a reusable bottle. We don't actually need to buy every time a plastic bottle. Or for the plastic straw, for example, we don't need a plastic straw to drink a fruit juice or to drink our beverage. There is only a few percent of the population that have no choice, that have to be fed with a straw, but all the others we actually don't need it. And actually for the plastic straw, I have to say that nowadays there are also alternative solutions. For example, there are like reusable straws that are maybe in metal that you can bring in your bag every time, and there is also a little brush so you can like easily wash after use. And even for the plastic cup, for example, there is no need to use every time a plastic cup. We can bring a cup in our bag every time we go around, or even if we hang out with friends or go to the parties. Now there are also many solutions where the cup is actually can like be squash and become really, really small. So we actually have the solution to do that. And I earlier mentioned about the plastic bags. For example, when we go shopping with our mom, we can ask her to bring our reusable bags. So we avoid to to use the plastic bag from the grocery, for example.
All right, great options there. And we're hearing more and more places that are banning straws, banning more single-use plastics. And then there's great things that you can get to carry around. So just to stick in your bag, this is just a simple set here. You can have your utensils made of wood, a metal straw here that you can use over and over again. So slipping that in your bag could be a great way as you're out and about to stop using some of those single-use plastics. So, Martina, I think we have time for a couple more questions.
Okay.
So if you have some more questions, give me a wave in your classroom and we'll come back and visit your classroom and work in another question because we do have a couple more minutes. So give me a wave in your classroom and I'll know to come back and visit again. In fact, I think at St. John Catholic, I think I see a couple students standing by the camera. So let me bring them back in here.
Yeah, Maria has a question she'd like to ask.
All right, awesome. Hey, Maria.
Hello.
Nice and loud.
When we get microplastics out of the ocean, where will we be putting them to let them decompose while it's away from wildlife?
Can you repeat, please? Sorry.
You just repeat it?
Yeah, nice and loud.
Yeah. When we get microplastics out of the ocean, where will we be putting them to let them decompose away from wildlife so that nothing else can eat it?
So when we talk about microplastics, so the really tiny plastic pieces, it's actually hard to bring them out from the ocean. I mean, people that study, scientists like me, for example, use specific instrument to like monitor certain areas of the ocean, certain areas of the planet to understand how many microplastics are in the ocean, where like these microplastics are more frequent, but so far it's actually almost impossible to remove all the microplastics from the ocean. It's really actually difficult to remove macroplastics, so the larger plastic objects. So micro is even more difficult. What I think honestly is, so plastic pollution is definitely a huge problem. So that's why we should like work on the source, because if we don't work on the source, unfortunately, we are producing more and more plastic in the future. So it's like a circle that never ends. But if we work on the source, we were mentioned, for example, earlier, some like alternatives to plastic that we can use in our daily life. So if we can avoid to use plastics or eventually to avoid that plastics end up to the ocean, I think it is the best way of approaching the plastic problem. That's why at the end of my presentation, I said that all of you students can actually change the planet because you will be the adults of the future. So you can make changes in your families, in your communities to prevent plastics on ending up to the ocean and hurting marine animals and all the environment. I'm not sure if I answered your question, honestly. If not, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the perfect way to kind of sum it up is I always kind of think of a bathtub analogy where if the tap was on and the bathtub was overflowing onto the floor, you wouldn't stand there and mop the floor, you turn the tap off first, right? So I think that's exactly right, is we have to stop the flow of plastics getting into our waterways, into our oceans, and then we can look for ways to clean up some of the larger pieces. But like you said, the microplastics, we just don't have a very good way to get those out of the water. We can take samples and stuff, but we can't, removing all the microplastics would definitely be a massive challenge and undertaking.
Yeah.
All right, Miss Hardy's grade 5/6s. I see someone waiting there for us.
if a fish like digests a plastic pollution in some sorts, will like while it's giving birth, will the fish like the babies come out with plastic?
So in fish, this is not actually happening, but the main reason is that is not actually happening so far, because in the future everything can happen, honestly. But this to continue the answer, this because microplastics are currently in the intestine or the stomach of the fish, and the eggs are actually produced elsewhere in the gonads, so in another organ. So actually there are like few studies that found really tiny nanoplastics, so really small plastic pieces also in other organs, so not just in the intestine, but in fish is this mechanism has not been observed. But that's a really good point, actually, because we were talking earlier about seabirds, where the parents like feed the chicks with plastic. So, but let's see, maybe in the future we can see something similar.
All right, great questions coming in today. I just want to check in with our crew in Florida. Do we have one more question? I don't want to leave you guys out.
I can certainly pull up another question if you'd like me to. They left me with a
Sure.
All right, 1 second.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna grab one more question from our grade 6s as well, Martina, and then we'll let everyone continue with their day so far. But it's been a ton of fun hanging out today. But Mrs. Pressel, go ahead.
Of all the different plastics, is there one that is known to break down quickly or reasonably quickly compared to others?
So it basically depends from many, not just from the polymer itself, but also from many other environmental conditions. Because if, for example, the plastic ends up to the ocean and is affected by the sea, by the UV sunlight, is like the degradation happen more quickly. But if there are other conditions, the degradation process happen like slowly. And there is also the biological influence that take part in this process. When I say biological, I mean all the microorganisms, so living microorganisms that can actually live on the surface of plastic itself, and they are like they have a certain role in promoting the fragmentation. So depending on the kind of microorganisms that live on the plastic and this like microenvironment that they create, I mean, we can have different like fragmentation speed. So it's hard to answer this question just because there are many factors that depends on it.
Okay, great.
And Joe, I don't know if I can add one last thing.
Yeah.
So I want to show you, this is a mask that I found underwater this summer, a couple of months ago. There are still like, I don't know if you can see, like algae pieces attached. So we are in the middle of a pandemic, and so we know that it's really important to use masks, but we have to be really careful because they are ending up to the ocean, hurting a lot of marine animals. For example, there are many seabirds and marine creatures that get stuck in the ring of the mask, and they have not like hands or fingers to disentangle, so it can be really, really dangerous. So what I can suggest is every time we use a single use mask, we can like cut the ring with scissors. So there are also many campaigns around the planet that are called Cut the Ring. So remember, before disposing a mask, just remember to cut the ring. So if in case he will ends up to the ocean, at least he will not entangle some birds or some other creatures.
All right, that's a great point, as there is a lot of PPE being used and a lot of it is single use, and unfortunately, a lot of it does make it into our waterways. So that's great advice to help protect marine life. And I think there's one more point to touch on before we wrap up today. Our grade 6s in London are really curious about, you mentioned clothing, fibers from our clothing, making it into the waterways, microfibers. Can you just touch on that a little bit more? They'd like to hear a little more information.
Yeah, so basically, many of our clothes, like I said, are made with polyester, polyamide, nylon, so synthetic fabric clothes. And so these fibers, these fabric fibers are come from plastic, from the plastic materials. And unfortunately, every time we wash these clothes in the washing machine, many of these fibers are released with the runoff. And unfortunately, those are plastic. So these really tiny filament, these really tiny microfibers cannot degrade in the environment really easy, like plastic itself. And actually, microfibers are currently considered one of the biggest threat for the microplastic pollution, because it has been considered like the biggest presence among all the microplastics in the ocean. So what can we do to avoid this problem? So one of the solution is to use a natural fabric clothes, like cotton, wool, silk. There are also many other natural fabric that release itself microfibers, but come from natural sources. And another things that we can do is to act on the washing machine. There are currently many filters that can be applied to the washing machine, and that can filter the most of the fibers that are produced during the washing. One of the most efficient, for example, that is also published in many papers on the scientific literature, is the X-Filtra, that is filtering about 78% of the microfibers released. But this problem is not just related to the washing machines, but also to the dryers. Also during the dryers, many of these fibers are released in the environment. There is a few studies of my colleagues, Rachel Miller, where she measured the microfibers concentration released from a dryer in Vermont, so in the north of United States. And once released in the environment, they can be easily travel through the air. So it's not just an ocean problem, it's also a land and air problem.
All right. Yeah, I remember reading an article not too long ago that they were finding microfibers in the ice.
Yes.
In the snow, in the Arctic. So, yeah, even through the air, we're finding those microplastics, those microfibers are being transported.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to start off with a reminder that we are hosting ocean plastic events all month long. So if you head to exploringbytheseat.com, and then you can either find it under the special events or add ocean plastics. You can find all of the other events that we do have coming up over the next few weeks that you can check out, register and check out with your classrooms. Of course, the regular website is just exploringbytheseat.com. You can check it out there. I want to give a huge shout out to the classrooms who joined us today, all the classrooms that joined us virtually. And of course, I'll pop in a few of our live classrooms here. Thank you so much for hanging out with us a little bit today. It was great to have you with us. And then I want to give a huge shout out to you, Martina. What a great way to kick off another year of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. Thank you for a great jam-packed presentation. So much good information. It was awesome to have you hanging out with us today, Martina.
Thank you so much, Joe. A big hug to everybody.
All right. Have a great rest of the week. Hopefully we see more classrooms in our events. But for now, we'll sign out. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye.